All right, welcome to another episode of Warrior versus Zombie. And as always, I have an amazing warrior guest to share with you today, Joanne Chun, and I'll introduce her to you in a second. But first, let me explain why you're here. Success is a journey, it's not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are all part of making us who we are up to this point, and they provide a foundation for our path forward. We all battle our inner zombie as well as those zombies in our world. And in each episode, I interview warriors who are aspiring leaders from all walks of life: entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, coaches, any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause, they have a unique value, and a vision that goes generations into the future. And today's guest is no exception. Joanne Chun is an amazing warrior. She is an artist, business, and ministry coach, and is writing a book on the state of the church and her journey in faith. Her journey began in New York and then moved to California, teaching elementary school, where her faith led her to North and South Korea, North China, Alaska, Washington State, where she trained and looked and took mission trips to Russia, Alaska, Brazil, Israel, Spain, New Zealand, Australia, Tibet, and South Africa. My goodness, she traveled around a lot. She attended the Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry, interned, and then helped lead evangelistic outreach for students. Most recently, working with Crisis Response International, she deployed to Nepal and Iraq, supporting and counseling those affected by the earthquakes and the refugee crisis, as well as she was providing guidance to those in leadership. Joanne's vision and passion is to see individuals, cities, and nations raised up in the fullness of their God-given potential. Joanne Chun, welcome
Hi,
to Warrior versus Zombie. How are you today?
doing very good. How are you doing?
I am always good. If you get to know me a little bit, that's always the answer to the question.
Yes,
Always good.
it's gotten cooler here in Texas, so it's a good day today.
Yes, being in the same city, I know my wife grew up in Michigan, and she covets this time of year. She's excited when the weather cools. She's not a fan of the heat. I don't mind the heat so much, but I do love the fall and the spring, and sometimes even the winter in Dallas because it's not so bad. So what else is anything else going on in your world today? What's occupying your time as we speak, other than the things that we'll talk about in the third segment?
So I am currently relaunching my coaching. I did that for a while after ministry school,
Mhm.
and working on my book. I'm writing a book about my journey, my adventures overseas and to a lot of different places that were quite interesting. And also writing a book on the state of the church, which has come out of my journey of traveling within the US.
Yeah,
So,
and we'll get a chance to explore what that looks like in the third segment. And so, and I suspected that you're having just met a few weeks back. I know you're very consumed with that, and that's a beautiful thing. It's it's a when you wake up in the morning and all your mind can think about is the what you want to accomplish today to move down that journey. It's brilliant, and it's a wonderful way to live. And that says your warriors engaged and your zombies on pause, which is a beautiful thing. So let's do this. I want to get into your story, and so when we come back from the break, after hearing for the audio audience a little of Ricky Jean Wright, our theme song, which is Not to Get in There, I want to hear about how you got from where you started, and I know you got a lot of journey and a lot of stuff you've done. I want to hear about how you got from where you started to where you are today, and then when we get to what you're doing today, we'll take a break, and then we'll get to hear a little bit more of that. So with that, let's take a quick break, hear a little of Ricky Jean Wright, and we'll be right back with Joanne Chun and Warrior versus Zombie. All right, we are back. And Joanne, that was a short check-in, but I know you're excited about getting to telling me what you're doing today. But before we get there, I want to hear, tell me about how all this started, from the elementary school teaching to, we kind of want to hear your journey. And I know God's played a big role in that, and I know that, and that's a beautiful thing. But tell me, what is it that, how did you get from where you started to today, what you're doing now?
Well, it's kind of amazing. The more I look back on my journey, the more I'm kind of amazed that I lived through all that and have traveled that much. I mean, sometimes I literally turn around and look at a map and I'm like, whoa, that's, I covered a lot of that space in most of the continents and in a short amount of time. And so it started back in New York. I actually did not grow up as a Christian, but I got saved. I became a Christian in college, and almost right away knew that I would become a missionary because I've always had interest in travel. I remember when I was younger, back when Russia was considered the Soviet Union and they called it the Iron Curtain, and they talked about, just communism being sort of the evil empire. I would watch the news thinking those people are just like us. It's like they're no different. And even though they're trying to make it like it's an evil empire, and I had an interest, it kind of sparked my interest. And so that actually ended up being my first missionary trip, was to Russia soon after communism fell. And that's where I got I guess you call it the travel bug or the missionary bug. I just knew that I was called to be overseas and to serve God, in other nations. The only thing that I had in my mind, or I guess the only limitation I had, is I will go anywhere except for East Asia. I am ethnically Korean. And looking back, I didn't realize I grew up with a not great perspective or view of Koreans. I think because of my parents' own experience in that nation. They came as immigrants to America in their early 20s, and they had a pretty tough upbringing in Korea. And so my thinking is I'll go anywhere in the world except for that area. Well, of course, after teaching or during my 2 years of teaching elementary school in California, I was attending a church where the first missionary from that church, from our church, was sent out, and he was sent out to China, North Korea. And he came back and shared a testimony. He's only a year older than me. He came back, shared a testimony, and it was not of me at all. I just started weeping from the moment he started speaking to the moment he stopped, which must have been about 45 minutes. I wept so hard that I had to bite my lip so that nobody would hear. It's like the loud kind of weeping. And as soon as he finished, I said in my mind, I need to get into that country. And then the next moment, I'm like slapping myself, like, what are you talking about? Like, that's the last place you ever wanted to go. And so that's where the journey began. I actually ended up going on a short-term trip. That church would send out trips to Northeast China. And I had signed up for Mongolia, or somewhere kind of further west. And my pastor came up to me and said, nobody signed up for Mongolia except for you and another person. I'm putting you on the China trip. And I said, no. I was like so strong about it. I was like, nope. And he was like kind of taken aback, like, why are you saying no in such a strong way? And so he said, just see if you could get people to take over your, I was teaching Sunday school and other obligations. And literally it just fell into place one after another. Like, I didn't even have to try. And so I knew God was calling me to go. And I went there and I prayed and prayed and prayed before I went, like, God, change my heart for the people of Korea, for the people of Asia, if you're calling me to go to actually serve these people. I can't go with a bitter heart. I can't go with an angry heart. And so I ended up going. It was, I think, a 1 month trip or 1.5 months. It was a little long for a short-term trip. I got so sick there, my team wanted to send me back. And but God told me, keep staying. There's a reason why you're here. And so they sent me to live with that missionary that spoke at our church. And he was just getting started with breaking into North Korea. And so I lived with him and his wife, and I saw firsthand what it looks like for a pioneering missionary to try to break into a closed door nation, and just a sacrifice that they would make. I mean, they had a baby. They bought a air purifier for the baby, but as soon as they found out that somebody on the North Korea side needed one, they didn't hesitate. They just sent it over. Like, everything went over the border. to the other side. And it just brought me to tears, just watching them live their life so sacrificially. And so that's where God sealed North Korea in my heart. And so I came back home, and I didn't tell any of my friends or family that I'm headed to North Korea. I said, I'm going to teach. There was a school for missionary kids whose parents all pretty much have that goal to go into North Korea. And so I just said to my church and my friends and my family, I'm headed to China. I didn't really mention North Korea too much. Ended up going, taught for a year. I fell in love with the kids, fell in love with just China. I brought everything with me because for me, it was like North Korea or bust. Like I really felt like I'm going for life. Like I took my picture frames. I took every single pair of shoe I had. I mean, it was just, I took everything. They thought it was like 4 people coming when I arrived at the station, and they were picking up my stuff. And so after a year, the Lord called me to go to South Korea. And that's when, so there was an interesting story. I don't know if I should insert, I don't know how much time we have, but I, in the middle of that year, there's a what do you call it? Like a break, a vacation, a holiday, a Chinese holiday. It's one of the biggest ones. And usually everyone goes back home. And I kept feeling like God wanted me to take a retreat. Well, I prayed and prayed and kept feeling like he wanted me to go up on a mountain. And I'm like, I don't even know how to speak Chinese. I'm in the middle of Northeast China. Like it was, Siberia is not too far. It was like freezing cold. The roads are all icy. And the long and the short of it is I kept praying, and through signs and all these things, like I looked at the clock one day and noticed that it actually had the name of the nearby mountain, which is a famous mountain between North Korea and China. And I got my friend to join me. She's like one of the most timid girls in the world. And she said yes somehow. And I just prayed and said, God, I just need to know that we're going to be safe. Because I checked with one of our, he's kind of like a guide to new people who are coming in as missionaries. And he's like, absolutely, do not go there. It is not tourist season. It's only open in the summer. He's like, do not go to that place. It is just closed. The roads are icy. The taxi drivers are crazy. You don't know how to speak Chinese. You know, he was listing everything. And yet I kept hearing God say, I need you to go. This is a test. For a prelude for you going to North Korea, I need you to follow my voice. And so the night before I made my final decision, I said, God, I just need to know that you're going to keep us safe. And so I went to sleep, and God often speaks to me through music, through songs. I woke up, and in the morning, what kept playing in my head was the Korean national anthem. And I don't even know the full meaning of it. I just knew it because years ago, my sister and I were camp counselors at a Korean American camp. And we would have to get up in front of the flag and sing it every day. And this one line kept playing in my head. And it was Hananimi Pektu Hasa, Hananimi Pektu Hasa. So I was like, I know Hananim means God. I don't know what Pektu Hasa means. So I looked it up in the dictionary. It means protect. God is protecting you. God is protecting you. And I was shocked. Like he literally answered my question through a song when I woke up. So I knew he was saying to go. So we set out. We had the safest taxi driver to this day. Usually taxi drivers are crazy. He was the slowest. We pushed up the mountain. I stood at the gate, and it was locked. And I went into the little guard thing. And these guys were like in their undershirts, and they were smoking and alcohol, you know, these soldiers, Chinese soldiers. I couldn't speak a word Chinese. And they were like, I said, open the gate. And they said, no. I said, open the gate. And I just stood there. And I said, I'm not, in my mind, I said, I'm not moving, because I got this far. It was like 5-6 hour drive on like really bumpy roads. And finally, one guy opened the gate, and we went up. There's no snow plows in China. There's nothing. And we went up and up and up, and we got stuck. The worst nightmare. We got stuck. And I said, come on, Debbie, we're going to push the car. I'm from New York. I know how to do this. So we pushed the car, and somehow got unstuck, and it happened again. And even the taxi driver was worried, you know, and he's done a lot of driving. But finally we got to the top, and somehow there was a hotel there. And I was as shocked to see the hostess of the hotel as she was to see me. And so we ended up sleeping there overnight. We paid for the taxi driver. I thought I was going to be there for a few days, take the retreat the next morning, and, you know, walking in the beautiful snow and all this. And God said to me, okay, you can go back home. And I was like, what was all that for? And, you know, he said to me, I needed to know that you were going to follow me no matter what. That fear was not going to dominate your life. that the opinion of man is not going to dominate your life. Because when you tell people that you're going to go into North Korea, you're going to have every possible obstacle and every person saying no to you, but you need to follow me. And so that's what ended up happening is I went back home after a year of teaching in China, and I told everybody, my church, my pastors, my friends, my family, I have a heart for North Korea, and I'm going back to Northeast China or going to South Korea to learn language and then head back. And every single person said no, just like God told me. And only one person, my sister, said, if God is really calling you to go, you only have one person that you're going to stand before when you die and give account to, and that's God. And so if you need to go, then go. And so I ended up, it was a 9-year journey of language learning and North Korea training, history of North Korea training, and all this, and living in South Korea, and went in and out several times. And in the end, there was an opportunity. We were doing business as missions to get in, and there was an opportunity for me to go in as an accountant for a new business. And I was paired with another guy who was going to be vice president. And I went around America doing fundraising. By the time I got back, he decided to completely pull out because he went over the border for the first time and it was too much for him. And so my position was compromised. And in the end, my leader said that your chances of getting in at this point for the next several years is slim to none. And so I prayed and I felt like God wanted me to come back to the States, and I was completely brokenhearted because I went after it for 9 years thinking I was going to live there for the rest of my life. And so I came back and God said, now you're a missionary in America. And I crossed my arms. I said, America doesn't need missionaries. I was very resentful and came to find out that, we do. We've changed a lot, and we do need people to, I guess, come back to our roots in some ways, and to come fully alive in who we are in God. And so came back to America, did ministry school, and then God had me on a moving journey around America. And I've lived in all kinds of places. I've lived in Alaska, I've lived in Vermont, New Hampshire, in North Carolina, in the South, North, everywhere, and just helped equip the body and the gifts of the Spirit for the purposes of evangelism. And through that journey, I also started coaching a little bit. And that's where I really came alive, is in the coaching. And so it was a many-year journey. And I arrived in Dallas. Actually, I did forget one part is I did have 9 years of chronic illness after all those missionary trips. My last trip was to Iraq, working with refugees. And after that, my health went down for about 9 years.
Oh, wow.
And in those 9 years, I knew that I don't think God gives us illness, but I think he uses those kind of seasons to speak into us. And I knew that part of why I was so sick was because of the lifestyle I had led in pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, A-type personality, just pushing past every type of challenge, never really taking rest. And so part of my life message now, even in the coaching for leaders, I have a heart for leaders, is, are you living a lifestyle that's healthy? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you setting healthy boundaries? Because if you're not healthy as a leader, no matter whether you're a ministry leader or pastor or a business leader, there's no way that your ministry or organization is going to thrive. And so that's part of my life message and what I speak.
Yeah, and we'll get into that in a second, because I want to talk about your message today and the things you're doing. Let me emphasize a couple of things here, because I think the audience, you've hit on, I've heard some zombies, I've heard some challenges. People often show up, what I call the zombie horde will often show up to try and keep you as a warrior from moving forward. Again, when you talk about your health, your wealth, the progress, we're all designed, and I believe designed by God, if you want to call God whatever you want to call him, you want to call him the universe, you want to call him whatever. I don't really get hung up on that as much as just understanding that there's only one source of truth and we don't get to make up our own. And the reality of it is that we're all going to face zombies, both in our mind and in our life. We're body, mind, and spirit. Obviously, listening to your story has been driven a lot by your what I would call connection to source, your spirit, you've been very tuned into that. That's a very good thing. However, it can also be, even if, I mean, God designed us for rest. That's why, and again, I don't normally on the podcast, beat people up or whatever with biblical principles, but frankly, if you apply them to your business as a warrior, as an entrepreneur, you'll understand that I have a lot of coaches that come on this podcast that may or may not be driven, heavily by the Spirit, but realize life balance. You hear that all the time, and that is something that is very much in vogue right now. I think through the pandemic, through a lot of the things people have gone through about health challenges, we realize that even our thinking, our success, the decisions we make are affected by fear, are affected by the distractions, and we have to take a step back, and we have to basically give our body a Sabbath, a chance to rest and recharge. Good health is part of that, is having a good night's rest, being able to have the peace to be able to let your mind go and relax. So many truths there, so much there. And again, for those that are listening to this and you're talking about God and you're talking about the Spirit and you're talking about leading things, don't get distracted by that. Realize that what Joanne's talking about here applies to your business. I don't care what business you're in. I don't care if you identify as one faith or another faith. Everybody needs connection to a source or a mission or a vision outside themselves. And what you just heard is somebody who has that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. Thank you for sharing your story. Hear a little more of Ricky Jean Wright, Joanne, and then we're going to be back and we get to talk about now what you really want to talk about is why you're doing what you're doing today, the unique value you see yourself providing, which I can hear a lot of experience behind that. And then if anything were possible, what kind of impact do you want to have? So let's take a quick break, hear a little more Ricky Jean Wright, It's Not the Getting There, and we'll be right back with Joanne Chun and Warrior versus Zombie. All right, we are back. And Joanne, quite a journey. I know you even had to compress a lot of that there because of all the places you've been, all the stuff you've done. I've got a little more history behind me than you, which means I'm old. But it still means that, we all have to kind of hit the high points. And if I talk to you again, you'd probably give me some different high points, but that was beautiful. That was wonderful. I love hearing. I'm sure it'll be an inspiration to somebody. They always are. But tell me, why are you doing what you're doing today? Explain that to me, and then kind of what value you provide, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so today after going through those years of about 9 years of chronic illness, I realized that God had me start the coaching before the 9 years. And then, even in the midst, when I was still not too bad, I tried to relaunch it and it just wouldn't go. I knew it was God that was stopping it. And so that's a long period of time, is 9 years waiting on doing what you really feel like you're called to. And I really feel like in the midst of those 9 years, he helped formulate more of my life message and more of who I am, what my passions are, and what I'm called to do on this earth. And I think that if it were not for those 9 years, I would not be where I am today in terms of having the passion that I do for how I want to help people. And so in the coaching today, it looks a little different than it does 9 years ago. One area definitely is what we touched on just now, is seeing leaders be fully who they were called to be on this earth. So whether you're a ministry leader, whether you're a business leader, whether you're a government, whatever, I think all of us in some arena, we are leaders. Even moms, you're leading children, you're leading your family, dads, whatever it is you do vocationally, you're still a leader. And I feel like as leaders, especially in today's fast technologized world, we really need to be more intentional about taking a step back and giving ourselves the breath and the space to actually sit and sometimes just be. Not even watch a movie, which can be restful for a lot of people, or listen to music. But I think that we even need moments to just literally sit and be, not have computer on, not have our phone on, not have anything of technology on or any stimulus. There's something about being still and quiet in this fast-paced world where there's so much stimulus around us, physically, emotionally, mentally, every part of our bodies being stimulated. And I talked to a young gal before I moved to Dallas. I was in Lindale, and she's half my age. She's in her 20s, and she said something to me that surprised me, because I really thought people of her generation, they're just constantly on the phone, they're constantly on Twitter or whatever it is. And she said that some of her friends told her that they intentionally took time, whether it was a week, whether it was 2 weeks, to literally get off of everything. And I was surprised, because I thought that was something maybe the older generations would do because it's easier for us. We weren't born into that generation. But when she told me what they had experienced in that space of time and how it literally changed their lives and literally changed the way that they saw people and the way they saw themselves and the world and God and everything, I was so encouraged and refreshed, because that's really my heartbeat is, we as leaders, more than ever, because of the state of the world right now, there's so much happening. We have to take a step back. I don't think there's even a choice in the matter. We have to take a step back, and we have to take that place of rest for ourselves, mentally, emotionally, physically. And we have to be so intentional. We have to fight for it, because it's constant right now in our lives. There's every single one of us, we could think of 100 things we could do in a single day. But when we take that step back and we're actually able to literally rest, not just physically, but like you said, in our minds, have that peace, right? However that peace comes for you. Some people it is taking a bath. Some people it's getting away into the woods, whatever it looks like. When we're able to do that for ourselves, even in the midst of, let's say, a crisis in our business, or in the midst of something going wrong in our family, or there's always something happening. When we're able to do that, we're giving ourselves a gift to be able to be a blessing to the people around us. Because when we're so hardwired for always working, like I was, like a workaholic mentality, which I think a lot of people have in today's day and age, we spill over what's inside of us. So if you're constantly, like, I need to get this done, I need to be productive, that spills over onto the people around you. If you have staff, whether they're ministry staff, whether they're business staff, so I was working with I won't say which organization, it's a beautiful organization, but I was working with an organization, and God sent me there in that moving journey, and they were so burnt out. It was a ministry, they were so burnt out. And God told me to work with the leader and said, just give him the coaching. It's not going to be monetary, just give it to him. And so I had favor with him, and I got to talk with him. He said, anytime you want to come into my office and talk. And I just laid it out. I was straight up. I said, you actually need to give yourself and your staff, not just a week, not just 2 weeks. I sense that you need to give them, you need to stop all operations. I don't say this to every business, I do not, but they were in such dire state of exhaustion, all of them, mentally, physically, emotionally, that I said, take months if you need to, because if you don't, you won't be able to go for the long haul. And when I was in ministry school, they often said that. They said, don't rush coming out of the secret place, meaning don't rush coming out of those moments and those places and those seasons where God might be having you to rest intentionally, or be hidden and not really be upfront yet, because you want to make sure that your character is as big as your skills, because skills and gifts and talents, we're born with them, a lot of us, right? Or we cultivate them. But your character is something that you can't buy, you can't cultivate. It's something that's in you. And it only comes through experiences, hard experiences, suffering. It comes through rubbing people the wrong way and able to getting over those conflicts in a healthy way. All those things build our character. And if we rush our life, and if we rush trying to accomplish things, then we won't have the inner sense, that inner character to be able to treat people well and to love people well, which I feel like is the ultimate goal of why we're alive, is to love people well. Whether you're a business owner, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a teacher, is to love people well. And so that's ultimately my heartbeat, is, you know, helping to cultivate healthy leaders and healthy businesses and organizations so that you can love people well and you can make the impact that you were supposed to make in your business, but also through your business, and even spilling out into your community.
Yeah.
So that's my heartbeat.
That is so powerful, and so much alignment there. And again, I sense this, and a lot of people don't always understand. I probably mentioned it before on the podcast, but I run my life by divine appointment, what I call divine appointment, which means I don't spend a lot of time figuring out why somebody wants to connect with me. I try to accept that I make space for those people. I live a version of my ideal day every day, and I make space for the people that God, I'm a Christian, don't make any bones about that, brings into my life. Some of the most powerful things you said there are that distraction is a huge zombie, and it's a tool of basically the antithesis of good God's spiritual leading. It's the antithesis to that, because it keeps us away from and out of our conscious mind and moving forward with our real intent. The thing is, if you're on your phone, if you're on your screen, if you're responding or reacting to the cortisol in your life to kind of, hey, I got to make more sales, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to go. I mean, even in the context of church, go save a soul today because I didn't, I don't care what it is. If you aren't engaging your frontal lobe, God gives us the ability, and most people, I don't think everybody uses it, you process about 70,000 thoughts a day. And when you process those 70,000 thoughts a day, guess what? 95% of those thoughts and the things that your brain processes are exactly the same as the ones you did yesterday. Only 5% are really what it takes to make that your frontal lobe, where those are ones where you're making your intention. If you crowd those out with filling it up with TikTok videos or this or whatever, and or watching a TV show, or those distractions, or the negative things in our world, which we're constantly bombarded with these days, because it keeps you fearful and watching the news or watching this. And I had Joni O'Hanlon on my podcast last week, and she went to school as a journalist, and basically got out of that and started trying to got her degrees and advanced degrees, and she's in Northern Ireland, and she did all these things. And then she got out and she said, this isn't it. This isn't what I thought it was. It's negative. It's all the wrong. She doesn't even watch TV. And here's a journalist. She doesn't, consume media anymore. And during the pandemic, she did. So it was a beautiful example of the same thing you're talking about. Is we get in our business sometimes can be a distraction from us doing the right things in our life. So that's totally brilliant. And I can see, let me ask you one question, then we're going to take a break. So what is your vision of your impact? I mean, I get that you want to work with people. I heard, in the introduction even said, you want to transform. If anything were possible, and as I always say, I believe everything is possible. What kind of impact would you like to have on a scale? Is it like you want to talk, change, like my dream is to change, my vision is to change the world one dream at a time. So I'm always looking for dreamers. That's what I do. What's the impact that you're hoping to have?
Wow, that's a big question. I think the impact that I want to have is to let people know, every single person on this planet, because I encounter a lot of people. I talk to people on the streets. I give them words that I sense are from God. I encourage. I was born an encourager. When I was little, I would go to the ice cream truck guy and just give him a word of encouragement, and he gave me like a free ice cream cone, like I was just born to encourage. I think that for me, I get most excited seeing people walk in the fullness of who they are. And I think that part of that is knowing that you have an impact, not just a footprint, but a world changing impact. If you are able to fully step out of your fears and what's keeping you from doing what you're really called to do. Because I see a lot of people kind of meddling in areas. And I think there are seasons and times where we're called to do jobs just to learn how to be faithful in the jobs, even though we're not passionate about it or we might not be gifted in it, but God's just teaching us to be faithful, teach us like the character that I talked about. And I think for all of us, we have those seasons. But then there comes a time where I feel like God really calls us to walk in the fullness of who we are. And I think that I see a lot of people shying away. And I have to confess that I was one of those people shying away and hiding for a lot of reasons, because I'm not going to be financially successful. People are going to laugh at me. What are they going to think about me? And also inadequacy. I don't think that I have it. Who's going to listen to me? Who's going to watch me? Who's going to take what I have to offer? And I just want to see people, help people know, first of all, what they're called to, because I do think that I have a gift for that, but also to let them know that the impact you can make is much bigger than you realize. And part of that impact really is, like I said before, loving the people around you and loving the person in front of you, loving your staff, loving the client that just walked through the door, that you might be having a business engagement, but behind all of her smiles, she just lost her mom, or like something's going on in all of our lives. And I think that when we take the time, even as business people, even as doctors, even as whatever we're doing vocationally, if we take the time to make that impact on people, to encourage, to bless, to love, to even ask a question that might not seem, like, I don't know what you want to call it, politically correct, or, I don't know, like almost, I think we sometimes get too polite with one another.
Right.
And sometimes people need to know, especially in what we lived in through COVID, that people care, and there's been so much animosity and there's been so much division, especially in our nation. And I feel all the more that calling of really calling people out to what they're called to on the earth, but also the impact that they're to make through encouraging, through loving, through being intentional. Just as much as you need to be intentional about taking that rest, be intentional, like go out of your way to knock on your neighbor's door and just be like, hey, I baked an extra batch of cookies just to get to know them, And so it sounds kind of trite, but in the big picture, I want to see leaders be leaders and make that full impact on the earth. Because I think when we as one person do that, it's very contagious.
Yep.
And it spreads like wildfire. And we're able to, it's kind of like, what's that expression? Pass it forward, pass it on.
Yeah, pay it forward.
Pay it forward, pay it forward.
That's brilliant. And actually, I don't want to dilute any of that from there. I mean, I think that the reality of it is that, number one, you can impact the world and be everybody impacted, but you have to start one at a time. Now, there's ways to get your message out. I think the division, I think the lack of focus, again, is another distraction of the evil forces in our world. And we're encouraged to do that, and getting to a point where we recognize that it's all about those relationships is really where it's all about. And that's how, as they always say, it's a saying. It's not trite, by the way, but they're all. It's people don't want to hear what you know until they know that you care.
Right.
They don't want to hear how much you know until they know how much you care. And so the point is, if you don't start with the only two jobs we have, right? I got to love God and I got to love you. If I don't start with letting you know that I love you, and I love you for who you are, where you are right now, just like He did me, then I'm not doing it right. And so getting that and paying that forward and creating that viral movement is really what it's all about. That's what real viral movement is all about. So let's do this. Let's take another quick break, and we're going to come back, and we got to land the plane. I know this may have been a little long. I'm not even sure, but that's okay. We'll come back. I want to hear if we take away one thing or any one or two things, but if we take away anything from this discussion, this podcast, what would you want us to take away? And then we want to talk about how do we stay in touch with you. So let's take another quick break. Here, the outro, another segment of It's Not the Getting There by Ricky Jean Wright. And we'll be right back with Joanne Chun and Warrior versus Zombie. All right, Joanne, I knew this would be fun. I knew this would be great. And I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of people blessed by this. And I love some of the nuggets that you've given us. In other words, doing the things that you're called to do and doing them well. A couple of other things that, and then letting God's timing. There's a thing that actually is really science based that we've learned, that it's called creative procrastination. And it's something where people that are the most creative and do the most impactful things a lot of times will start something and then come back to it and procrastinate, and you'll think, okay, they're never going to get this done, and then all of a sudden they do something that changes the world. So creative, procrastination is often seen as a negative, and it usually is, but there is a thing to take a pause or to be still, and as the Bible says, be still and know I am God. So there is instruction for us to take a step back. But if we take away anything from this podcast, I know there's a lot of things we will take away, but what one thing would you hope that we take away?
I think the one thing would probably be not to let fear get in the way, but to fully be yourself, come out and fully be yourself. And in fully being yourself, take time for yourself as well. Because when you take time for yourself, then you're able to take time for other people. And I think it's as simple as that. We make it very complicated in today's day and age, and we come up with fancy words. But when we take time for ourselves and we allow ourselves to fully be ourselves, then we can take time for other people and they can be fully themselves. And there's something about that impact that we make. When we come alive, people around us are able to fully come alive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. I love the don't let fear rule, make space to be yourself. They always say, when you're on an airplane, right? If we lose cabin pressure, put your mask on first and then put it on your kids or the people around. I mean, it's such a truth that it's, there's only one source for truth, right? And there's such a truth that we have to be, if you can't fill somebody's cup from an empty glass. I mean, you've got to actually have something in. So that means you need to take time to marinate, to absorb, to learn, to do the things that you talk about, and take a breath, heal yourself. Well, this has been great, and I love the conversation. I knew this was a divine appointment. I knew it was going to be a blessing. I knew you were reluctant to do it, but we've had fun. I know that people, by the way, I know this will be up on the Be Connected platform. People can find you there. I know you're not really there right now, but we're going to have you there pretty quickly so that people can find you there. But how else would you like the audience to reach out to you?
So I have my business email address is joannecoaches@gmail.com. So JOANNE. And my website is www.joannecoaches.com. And then I do have a YouTube channel, and it's called The Arising Bride. And that kind of focuses on prophetic words for today, as well as encouragement and training people to do what I talked about, to encourage other people around them. So.
Well, that's a good way to get in touch with you. And I'm sure that there will be some folks reaching out to you. Again, I know there's a lot of things there, and I know you're really hoping to get launched here and get things going. And I'm excited that we had our divine appointment to get this done. And again, there's no mistakes. So thank you, Joanne. Thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful spending time together.
Yeah, we had fun. All right. Well, for those that are listening, we've come to an end here. We have to, we'll hear the final outro if it's not the getting there, and we'll be back next Thursday at 11 a.m. Central, or whatever that is in your time zone, with another episode of warrior versus zombie and another warrior. So let's hear a little bit more of Ricky Jean Wright, and we'll call it a day. Have a blessed day.